So my name's Jason. I'm here from Equifax to talk about managing continuous delivery. And what I want to talk about today is some efforts that we have underway to address a lot of the same problems we heard about this morning. So, as a big company, we have faced a lot of the issues of how do I push new applications out quickly and easily? How do I manage all that infrastructure? So Equifax is, of course, a pretty big company. How many of you guys are familiar with Equifax? Yeah, most people have heard of them, right? What does Equifax do? What's that? Yeah, we do. Okay. I guess I shouldn't have asked that question. So most people know Equifax is like the credit reporting company, right? But we actually have been seeing big changes in business to where I believe like less than 50% of the revenue now comes from credit reporting. Instead, Equifax has been doing a lot more data integrations and giving people a higher order value than just credit reports. So big company, and of course, as a big company, we have lots of developers, lots of teams, lots of locations everywhere. And of course, everything in a big organization like this is running on the very latest and greatest technology all the time. Or maybe not, right? We certainly have a lot of everything that we try to bring together into applications. So technically speaking, I'm just going to mention I work for a division of Equifax called Equifax Workforce Solutions based in St. Louis. And Workforce Solutions actually doesn't really have anything to do with the credit product. Full disclosure, I have never computed a credit score in my life. I don't know how to do it, right? That all happens in Atlanta, and they don't let us see that code. But what we do is Workforce Solutions services a number of verticals today. So auto industry, mortgage, anything that involves, generally speaking, either dealing with employment or dealing with workforce history or work history. And so there's a lot of changes going on in Workforce Solutions. We were actually acquired by Equifax in 2008. And it's kind of a fun rivalry because at Workforce Solutions, we are mostly a Windows shop. Can I say that at this conference? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. So all right, I have another out there. So we have a large investment in the Microsoft.NET platform, and we have a lot of applications we've pushed out. And in the past couple of years, really I'd say in the last 2 years, we've seen a rapid diversification in the products that we ship and a rapid diversification of partner integrations, right? So a lot of our new focus these days in our development teams is not how do we produce an application, but how do we get our data from these guys and combine it with data from these guys or from our own internal stuff and give that to customers, right? To give them better visibility into what consumers are doing. Right, so that's kind of what Workforce Solutions does. I work on a team that was formed, I guess, arguably about 2 years ago, and our mission has been to make all this stuff happen faster, right? So I was interested listening this morning to the first talk where he talked about we need to deliver new products faster, right? So that means our code changes need to go out quicker, and we need to deliver entirely new products quicker. We need to be able to provision infrastructure and set up entirely new applications very quickly. And then the final piece of that is we need to get feedback back to the business so we can figure out what's working, right? Is this product better than that product, or how can we make tweaks? And that's really the best way that we're seeing to get growth. So as I said, there are some challenges at a place like Equifax because Equifax is just big. We have developers and we have data centers on, I think, 5 continents. Not Antarctica yet, but we are taking applications. So if you feel like working in a cold place, maybe we can set you up there. We have a very heterogeneous world then, right? So as I said, in my little fiefdom in St. Louis, we tend to be kind of Microsoft-centric. That's changing, and whenever we go down to Atlanta to hang out with those guys, they are very not Microsoft-centric, right? They're very much, a lot of them are old-school Java, but of course we have people deploying code on all kinds of platforms and starting to move into Amazon and Google and Azure, and we're all just sort of putting our toes in the water in a bunch of different places. So it's a very interesting place to be right now. So as I say, my team's job was to try and make all this go faster, and part of it was to try and build a platform that we could deploy this stuff to and manage it. So we would have liked to have had, I think, some of the stuff that we saw this morning in the first talk, but that stuff wasn't shipping yet. So we wound up building a slightly different platform. And what we did was we actually kind of slowly over time worked with a bunch of tools and found that some of the tools just seemed to work better than others. And we started bringing them together into a suite. And so the suite that I want to talk about here, and I think I actually want to demo for you guys, is one that I've started calling NOS. Because it just sounds cool, right? Powered by NOS. So the suite of products that seems to work really well for us is this kind of trio of, first of all, using NGINX. I think, anybody here not familiar with NGINX? If you're not, see me after the talk and I'll give you the quick rundown. I think you guys are familiar with that. We also use Octopus Deploy and Splunk to manage a lot of our application rollouts. Now, I imagine most of you guys are probably also familiar with Splunk. How many of you guys have ever interacted with Splunk? Yeah, it looks like at least half, right? So Splunk is very popular for ingesting your logs and getting insights out of it. And in addition to getting insights and reports, it also can give you some alerting capability. And we found that to be very useful. The piece that I suspect most of the people in this audience haven't really seen is a tool that we started using called Octopus Deploy. This is a tool that comes out of a company in Australia, and it began its life as a way to deliver Microsoft.NET applications. And in a lot of ways, it is still kind of in that space. But recently, well, so I should back up. That worked really well for us. We looked at probably a half a dozen kind of continuous deploy tools, and we found that for our applications, Octopus Deploy got us going really fast. It was really flexible, and it was easy to work with, and just kind of really well thought out. We looked at some other similar products and found that they were just, frankly, clunkier to work with, right? The workflow just wasn't as nice. So when we started looking at NGINX as our routing platform, of course, that's not a Microsoft.NET product, so far as I know. And so we kind of had NGINX kind of off by itself. But recently, Octopus has started supporting some Linux variations. And particularly, we run on CentOS. So we started looking at using Octopus to work with NGINX. And the truth is, it's been great. Octopus makes it really easy for us to kind of build a routing configuration and deploy it alongside or even part of our application deploys. So the workflow that we've kind of started using looks like this. So here what we can have, or here what you can see is we have our application servers where we deploy our code. Those are all kind of sitting in the middle, right? And customers that come to access our applications, they come through NGINX, and we're all familiar with that. I should say that in my world, we use NGINX almost 100% for reverse proxy, and we don't actually serve a lot of applications off of it right now. But for reverse proxy, it's unmatched. It's been completely stable. It's pretty easy to configure, and it's just foolproof. So that's kind of the route for our customers to get to our applications. But surrounding that, then, we have Octopus as our primary way of deploying the applications and also starting to deploy routing out to NGINX. And then as this stuff all runs, NGINX and our services and our websites, they can all send stuff to Splunk. And from Splunk, we get the insights and alerts, right? Both of which are really important. From my side of the house, I guess, I like the alerting capability because that lets me know when stuff looks funny. But then my product owners, they prefer to have the insights so that they can look at what's popular, right? What's happening on the site that maybe we should investigate more. So I'd like to actually show you some examples of how this works. And to do that, I need a volunteer. Not everybody raise their hand all at once. Okay, I have one in the back. All right, come on up. Cue the entrance music. All right, so come on up. What's your name?
Derek.
Hey, Derek, I'm Jason. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Now, Derek, have we ever met? Okay, good. So you don't know what I'm going to do here. This is not a canned demo. So I'm hoping that that fire that he set earlier really works for me. So what I want to do is I want to have Derek walk us through a deployment here real quick. And Derek, what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up the Octopus deploy dashboard, and I have built a little application ahead of time that we can demo that I'm calling just the Conference Assistant. It's a good app to have if you're attending an industry conference. But something that's important is any application you build has to have a cool nickname, right? A cool project name. And I actually had a boss, my previous boss, he actually made it official policy that he said you have to have a cool nickname for your project because that's just important. So first thing I need from you is we need a cool nickname for this project.
Ooh, I'm not creative. Cassie.
What's that?
Cassie, conference assistant.
Conference assistant. Okay, so we'll just go here. Actually, here, I wanted you to do it. So go into codename here and type whatever you want for the.
Overwrite that?
Yeah, just overwrite that, and give it a name. All right, cool. So this is Project Cassie, and we're ready to ship it. Quick question: how many people you think are attending this conference?
Probably 600, 800.
Okay, well, let's put a number in here. So just type in whatever you think. All right, 800. How many vendors do you think are out there?
12.
Okay. And I think that's it. Yeah, and then how many tweets do you think have gone out so far talking about this conference? I haven't looked this morning.
Actually, because they're using NGINX conf, it overlaps with people asking about NGINX
Configurations. So we'll say 27,000 then.
Perfect.
Right, okay, cool. So we'll go up here and save. Now what I'm doing in this case is NGINX lets you define project variables. And what's useful about this is NGINX will go into your files that you're deploying and it will just do variable replacements, right? And so you can define variables here that will show up inside your source files. So for example, if we go look at the HTML that we're about to deploy and we say, show me, let's see, that. Everything that's highlighted is a place where we're using some variable to drive what this website's going to look like. So let's go ahead and go deploy this website. So I'm going to ask you here, if you don't mind, press Create Release and scroll down a little here and just say Go. Click, well, let's make sure, hold on. Yeah, just click Save. All right, and now we want to deploy it. So what's your favorite color? Blue or green?
Green.
Cool. So we'll say deploy to green and just make it go. So while this runs, let me show you real quick. What we've done in Octopus ahead of time here is we've defined a little process for how we want to deploy our application. And in this case, it's just deploying out to some server on Azure. And since this is really just a simple HTML page with a little bit of JavaScript, it doesn't have a whole lot of work to do. So if we go back and look at our dashboard here, we should be able to see that looks like it has been deployed. And so let's go check it out. Yay! Right? So we can see Project Cassie has been deployed. We see that there's 800 attendees, 27,000 vendors and 12 tweets. That's kind of embarrassing. Either we typed it wrong or I put it wrong in the code. I'm not sure which. In any case, so we've deployed to blue, or to green, rather. Now, let's make a change. Let's go back to our dashboard. Let's see. Here we go. And what I want to do now is go back to the variables for this guy and say there is a greeting here. Let's change the greeting. So this is, if we go look at the site in green here, it says testing 1, 2, 3, which is kind of lame. So we need something else. You got any ideas? You can always ask the audience.
Anybody got any ideas?
We need like a catchphrase. Hello, world.
I'm Sassy Cassie.
Why not? I'm Sassy Cassie. All right. Cool. So I'm going to say apply. Now, one of the nice things about this tool is, I'm going to ask you again. So let's go ahead and release it to blue now. So we're going to create a new release. Now, when he creates a new release, this is going to take up those variables and bind them to the release. So something that we find works really well with Octopus. Oh boy, I'm letting him type. Haha. So one of the nice things is it binds up variable values and the binaries and everything into a well-defined concept of release. Yeah, now just scroll down here and say deploy to blue. All right, boom. And now this should do the same thing. We have a new version going out to blue. And as soon as it finishes, we should be able to go look and see that we will have slightly different code running in the two environments, right? So the idea behind this, of course, is we would test whichever one is live, or excuse me, whichever one is not live, rather, and then we'll do a flip when we like it, right? So let's just wait for it to finish. Looks like it's done. Check out demo blue, and there we go. I'm Sassy Cassie. So, have you used Octopus Deploy before?
Yeah, sort of.
Oh.
We're replacing it.
Yeah? Haha. Okay, well, that's embarrassing too.
Sorry.
Okay, well, that's okay. I think you're done here. I think that was all we needed. All right, so this is an example of rolling out an application, but of course, this is an NGINX conference, so we should probably talk about NGINX at some point. And if we go back and look at what I have set up here, what I wanted to show you was I have a couple of NGINX projects set up as well that are based on the same idea of putting variable values into demo.conf. So for an example here, let's go hit the application from the public URL I have. Yay, success. This is the splash screen, right? Clearly it didn't work, right? And if I have a couple of NGINX servers here that if we go hit them, there's nothing there, right? Nothing, nothing, nothing. So let's start by deploying a dashboard. Since this is NGINX Plus, I can push out their groovy status dashboard. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say create a release, go. Oh, and actually, let me do one thing real quick. This guy also has some variables. And in keeping with the theme here, okay, no, this guy doesn't. Yeah, we're good. Let's create a release, say go. Now, this is going to be a little different because when I deploy, he's going to deploy to a couple different servers. If we go, while he thinks, if we go look at the environments I have set up, I've said I have a development and a test environment. And in my development environment, I have a couple of NGINX servers, right? You can see defined here. One of these is playing the role of a DMZ, and the other one is playing a role of an application server or an application router. So we let this run. Looks like he's done. If he's done, this is where we cross our fingers. Hey, look at that. Now I have a dashboard, but there's nothing running, right? So if we go look at this, there's really not a whole lot to see, except I have some stuff left over from the past. Okay, so now if we go hit this thing, it's still not going to work. Because while I've pushed a dashboard up, I haven't put the application routing in place for my app, right? And so that's the final thing I'm going to do here is let's go back and deploy the routing. And this is what's been arguably the nicest feature because this is going to let me achieve some of the things that they talked about this morning as going into the controller project, not quite as nice, not quite as well put together, but I'm able to build it right now. So we'll let this go. I think it may have already started deploying. Yeah, okay, so he's thinking. And so this is going to go out to the NGINX servers, and push a configuration file and do a restart. There's not a whole lot to this particular process I have right now, but we can go see. Hang on a sec, go back over here. Yeah, actually, we'll go see him running. Yeah, and now it started to run. There we go. So you can see we're uploading some packages. They're on the servers. And now if all is well, we go back over here. There's some upstreams. And I meant to change foobar to Cassie, but oh well, it's too late now. So we can see there's a live and next available here on the DMZ. And in the app tier, we have foobar blue and foobar green. So what we should finally be able to see here is if I click on this, hey, it's up there. And some of you guys have laptops. You should be able to hit this. It's just NGINX 002. That's a very memorable URL. NGINX 002.eastus.cloudapp.azure.com. You're welcome to go look at it right now. You should see this. And I'm routing it to blue, which means I want to have some other way to get to green. And what I would usually do in that case is I would have a CNAME that I would hit. So, I would usually call that something like demo-next or next-demo or something, and I would hit that in a browser. Because we don't have a whole lot of time here, I'm not going to demo that, right? We're just going to look at the live piece. But what I wanted to call attention to is the structure, where in the DMZ, what I've done is I've defined live and next. And I've done that by having a couple of upstream pools with a pair of servers, right? In this case, they actually point to two slightly different places. Live points to 50,001, next points to 50,002. And those are pointing to the internal NGINX tier, right? In fact, I've got a picture, and then I'll show you a slide. So the model that we're building to here is this. This is what's running live right now. So you can see that we have the application is calling out through the URL that I gave you, which in turn is handing off to the green. What was live right now? Blue, actually, isn't it? So if we want to flip, oh, it looks like people are hitting it. If we want to do a flip, the way that I can do this is two ways. With NGINX Plus, I can do it in the UI. This is something that's fun to do as a developer, but it's a terrible idea in production, particularly if you have multiple NGINX nodes in a cluster together. If you go messing with one and then messing with the other, you have this weird time, right, where everything's not really together. But if you've messed with the upstream conf API, you know that this is really pretty straightforward. And so I wrote a little PowerShell to do this. And let's just go over here, v1. And we'll do, let's see, I want to do this. A hard swap foobar, I believe is what I want. Oh, hang on. All right, bang, 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 bang. And you can see that something happened here. And now if you guys are still hitting this site, what you should see is the color change. Let's go see if that actually happens. Now we see green, which I think is correct, right? Can't remember I think it was blue at first. If you don't see it, make sure you do a control F5 or control refresh, because what I've seen sometimes, your browser cache will kind of lie to you about what's actually live. So this particular, oh yeah, I'm seeing green back there. Thank you. So this particular application that we're looking at right now is kind of a standard vanilla modern-ish app where the default.html has some JavaScript that goes out and queries some services on the back end that I've lumped together in a place called stats, right? And so there's a couple of stats locations that are serving up JSON that are delivered here. And as you may have discerned from us typing the values into the UI, it's actually all completely hard-coded. There's no actual dynamic code running back there. And the reason I wanted to show you this was the idea here is that the website and the stats services, they're all flipping blue and green together, right? I think that's actually a really important point that frankly, I didn't see when I first started looking at blue-green, which was where do you put the boundaries, right? The management of which things flip together and which things are independent is, I think, the trickiest thing when you start composing your application out of multiple services. Right, so the simplest model is this. And I actually like this model because this lets me say, I'm going to test the whole site. As it appears in test, when I do the flip, it's going to suddenly look that way in production. But it's not always going to be quite that straightforward. And so what I wanted to do next was I have another version of this application. And what I want to do is, let's go publish it. So let's see, I need, what do we have here? Conference Assistant app, or V2 app. And I'm just going to publish it. So what this does is it uses a NuGet to package it up into what's basically a zip file with some additional metadata, and it uploads it to Octopus. That's what just happened right there. I'm going to go do the same thing for 2 other pieces, for the DMZ and for app route. Oops, not that. And these represent the 3 pieces, right? The first piece is what's the application code. The second piece being what is the NGINX configuration in the DMZ. And the third being what's the configuration at my application tier. So let's do this one as well here real quick. Publish. All right. So now let's go push out a new version of this application. I'm going to go to Octopus deploy. And I'm going to say conference assist, create release. And we should check, yeah, we can see 2.0 is now ready to be pushed out. So I'm going to publish it. And I'm just going to be lazy and say deploy to both environments. So here it'll run out in parallel. This should only take a couple of seconds. The difference between version 1 and version 2 of this application is that in version 2, we've enhanced it to do some partner integrations. Right? So it's one thing to be able to see some stats for what's going on in the conference, but I want to be able to get some additional value adds, right? So we've gone out and we've created partner integrations to tell me 3 important things for any conference goer. And the first is, where's the good food? So there's a food finder that you can interact with that will tell you, where's the food located in the venue and where's the good food hidden, right? And the second is a swag hunter. Because, of course, an important part of going to a conference is loading up on vendor swag. And I saw there's actually some pretty cool stuff out there. But no fidget spinners. Did none of our vendors have fidget spinners? That's really surprising. And then the third is just finding upcoming conferences. Because, of course, it's important to attend as many conferences as you can. Because then you're not really doing work. So let's go check it out. If I go click this, now that it has deployed, it doesn't look that different, except there's a new row. But these partner services are really a different sort of breed because they're not generally going to be deployed together with your application. When you have independent services like these, they're going to want to do blue-green switching on their own, right? They might run in a different network. They might be running off a different instance of NGINX, right? Or they might be completely external in some cases, in which case you don't even really control the blue-green. But when you're designing your system, I think there's a temptation to say, make everything blue-green, make everything flippable so that I can switch all the little knobs because it's so cool to do that. And it is. It's just hard to manage, right? Because it gets to the point where you're looking at your NGINX configuration and you've got all of these upstream configs, and somebody calls and says, hey, the site's misbehaving. And then you're immediately looking at 2 problems or 2 questions you have to answer really quickly. And the first one is, what's supposed to be live? Is it supposed to be blue or green? And the second is, what's actually live? Is it blue or green? And if those are different and you have a whole lot of complicated blue-green everywhere, it can make it really difficult to deal with incidents. So what I'm going to do in this case is I want to just demo that possibility of doing that. Because right now we're using the same routing as before. Everything sort of flips together as like so. But here's what I love about using something like Octopus Deploy. I'm going to go back to my tool, to Octopus, and I'm going to say, let's redeploy the routing. So I'm going to say create a release, and what I should see, is I see version 2.0 is now available. So I'll create this, and I'll say, I can put whatever we want in here, independent flipping. I don't know, and now let's let it run. So what I should be able to do if I'm fast is go here and look at the upstreams and go to here and look at the upstreams. If we kind of put them on the screen together, as this thing runs, yeah, do you see this one just flipped, or this one just changed? So we now see a whole bunch of new upstreams. And one of the things that's changed is instead of the app tier looking like blue and green, it's looking like live and next, which means I can now start independently flipping all of those things. If we go hit our site right now, doesn't look that different. But now I have the power, if I want to go back out to, let's see, scripts. And then, I don't know, somebody pick one you want to flip. We'll just pick food, I guess. Let's swap and just double check here. I think it's lowercase, food. Okay, yeah. Okay, boom. I swapped food, so now if I go refresh, we can see that that one just switched to green. So now I can switch all of these things independently up to and including the actual site, which I think is still that. So now I see green HTML, and one of my services is flipped to green, but everything else is still blue. And the final thing I guess I'll mention here then is if we do like swap stats, the way this thing is implemented right now, stats all flip together still, right? So those are probably code that is deployed as a single unit. So it just makes sense to have that be a unit, right? They share the green environment together. So that's what we can do with this tool to do deploys. Now, for time reasons, I'm not gonna show you the Splunk piece of it, but I wanted to give you a sense of how we can pretty easily deploy changes to our routing infrastructure using this workflow, right? So this is basically what we just did, was from development to code to deploy through Octopus. All right, so then this is the first routing that we had set up. This is what we set up in the second piece, right? Where I actually really only have one instance of NGINX running in the back end, but essentially it would look exactly the same here. The important point here is when we're doing independent flipping like this, the main role of the DMZ is just to hand out to back-end pieces that then ultimately make the blue and the green decision. Whereas in the first piece, we made the blue-green decision in the DMZ. And this just basically is a result of how we have been implementing router mesh. Let me just put this back up like that. The way we've been implementing router mesh is with a little more refinement over the pattern that NGINX published, which basically takes into account that we have DMZs and internal networks, and the internal networks are often firewalled off from each other. But the basic structure that seems to work pretty well for us is to have outer NGINX dealing with caching, gzip, geo, and providing services into the applications internally. Internally is where we tend to do the detailed routing of, we'll take this URL fragment and send it there, and take this URL fragment and send it there, right? And we have the internal services talk to each other through NGINX so that we can do all kinds of flipping rather than having them access each other directly. This actually has really improved things like how we do firewall rules and some other management overhead, because we have fewer routes, essentially, that are more controlled, moving between network segments. So this network diagram here represents something that has worked out pretty well for us. So, a couple lessons that we learned. First one, visibility is crucial, and I talked about this earlier. We actually had some problems standing up a product last summer, because it was very complicated, and it would break. And when it broke, people would say, well, what's live? And the answer was, well, go run these curl commands and you can figure it out. And it was just way too slow. So before we ever took the thing live, we actually sat down and developed some dashboards. And these are just some custom dashboards that we built that will go query NGINX and go query our application and give us kind of this integrated at-a-glance view of, is everything okay? So I guess my advice is if you're starting down the road of, I want to do BlueGreen, and I want to do all this cool stuff that we talk about, you are going to need some kind of tool to do that. So this is a piece that we built ourselves because it could get in and talk to our own applications. We also have had a lot of success with Splunk as a way to see what's going on in our applications. So in this slide, you can actually see a simple dashboard that we built that's showing this service is getting so much traffic, not a whole lot in this picture. But you can also see some of the alerts we set up, and there's actually a fun one here. You can see the alert in front, the mommy, he's doing it again alert. We had a service that we stood up that typically took very little traffic. We're talking on the order of a couple of hundred hits a day. It wasn't really a big deal kind of service. And then one day it got 15,000 hits in an hour. And we all went, what just happened, right? Because none of us expected that. And we asked around, and it was like, well, nobody wanted to fess up. So we actually put an alert into Splunk that could monitor NGINX and say, hey, when you see traffic, exceeding these bounds, then fire off an email. And like a couple of weeks later, I think it was like 4 o'clock on a Thursday, boom, I get this email that says, hey, it's happening. And we could go stop and okay, go find that guy. Who's doing that? Right? And so we were able to go figure it out. And so hooking Splunk up to NGINX just gives you all kinds of great benefits. We can look at BlueGreen flips. We can track when those kinds of things happen. You can see all the traffic metrics, right? We've just found it to be a really useful tool. So the last couple of things I was just going to mention, there were some general little things that we found that were challenges for us. HTTP-only and secure cookie management was one that we struggled with a little bit. Basically, at the edge, we wanted to make sure that all of our cookies go out as HTTP-only secure. We had a product in the past that was doing that, and we had to ensure that happened. That was a little icky, but I think we have a solution. State management is kind of a big one, though. The dashboard that we looked at is cool, right? The first time I saw the NGINX dashboard, I just fell in love with it. But when you have multiple node clusters, it's actually not, because you have to worry about the state of the whole cluster. And likewise, when you're trying to do scripting against it, you need to talk to each node individually. So I'm really excited about the products that they announced this morning, the controller, because that is going to make this stuff a lot easier, right? So I'm really looking forward to getting that running. The other thing they talked about in the controller that really excited me was the access control. One of the things that is a bit of a pain for us is we don't have LDAP integration. So we can't really tie it into some of our other provisioning systems. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with that. So I have 1 minute, 30 seconds left. I guess as far as future stuff that we're doing and stuff that I'd really like to talk to you guys about is higher order integrations. So managing on-site and cloud resources together and putting them into higher order tools like console or etcd or Spring Boot config. We've looked at a number of them. And we are still trying to figure out the best way to establish the single source of truth for what should the configuration be and have everybody kind of key off of that. We're also looking at our active-active and data center failover strategies. That's something that we're solving with other technologies right now. And NGINX has been really useful for internal to a data center routing, but not for bigger WAN kind of stuff when we're going cross continents. So there's a lot to do here, and hopefully I'll be back next year and talk about more cool stuff we do. But I guess in closing, I have 40 seconds for a question. Yeah.
What made you choose Octopus instead of something like Jenkins? What was the decision?
Good question. Yeah, we actually do use Jenkins to manage build. Sorry, the question was, why do we use Octopus instead of Jenkins? We actually do have teams using Jenkins to manage build. Octopus got us going faster and was I'm not going to say more flexible than Jenkins, because Jenkins is super flexible, but Octopus had a better defined ideas of releases and environments and variables. Right? Those things together made it a lot more productive for us. Okay, I have 210. Thank you very much for listening to my talk. To say that I have some demos and there's some papers that I wrote up that give more detail about what I talked about in this talk. So feel free to go hit up my GitHub and see the source code of what I deployed and then some papers discussing it. Thank you very much.